Hey, Xinfonia here. In this video, we will be taking a look at Fugue's builds, teams, Eidolons, and so on. But first, we will be starting with her kit. Fugue's main mechanic is her exo toughness and super break damage. As long as she is on the field, enemies who are broken once will receive 100% super break damage, and they get a second toughness bar that is 40% of the original 100%. You are in fact able to activate super break even while this second toughness bar is up, which contributes to much more damage after breaking the first time. Her skill grants one ally Fox and Prayer, and it gives the ally 30% break effect and the ability to reduce toughness regardless of types at 50% of the original reduction. On top of that, when the ally with Fox and Prayer attacks, Fu Gue has 100% base chance to reduce the defense of the enemy's attack by 18%. After using her skill, she upgrades her basic attack to an AoE basic attack, but all it really does is add 5 toughness reduction to 2 adjacent enemies, which isn't a whole lot. Her ultimate unfortunately doesn't really do a whole lot either at lower investment, as it deals 20 toughness reduction to all enemies, and it is a rainbow break, meaning it will reduce toughness regardless of weakness types. The problem with this is that Fu Gue has a maximum energy of 130, which means not only does her ultimate not do a whole lot, you will probably not get to use it very often either, since she doesn't use a skill every turn like Sparkle or Sunday. Her bonus abilities thankfully add to her utility, giving everyone else on your team 12% break each time you break an enemy, stacking up to 2 times for a total of 24%. This means breaking a single enemy with exo toughness will actually give you the maximum 24% break, meaning it is very easy to maximize this bonus ability and also very easy to keep it at 24%. Sylvan Anima gives Fu Gue an additional 30% break in battle, and the first time she uses her skill, she will regenerate 1 skill point, which can be very useful with E055 or Boot Heal, who can use their skill twice at the start of the battle. Finally, she delays action of the enemy target by an additional 15% when broken. But honestly, this bonus ability kind of works against her, as she would prefer if enemies recover faster in order to benefit from exo toughness damage again. Hence, a small 15% delay is alright. I do believe that this can stack twice, since you can break exo toughness and the normal toughness, so it is actually going to be 30%. Her technique is quite useful as well. It just applies the defense reduction from a skill to all enemies at the start of the battle, basically allowing you to have 100% uptime on her defense reduction. Furthermore, it advances her action by 40%, basically an inbuilt sprightly Von Wack, kind of like Robin's bonus ability that allows her to apply her Fox and Prayer before your speedy hyper carries even take action. Fugue's strength is most definitely her exo toughness and defense reduction application, as no other characters in the break team have this in their base kit. She does have lower super break damage than Harmony MC, due to Harmony MC's bonus ability Dance with the One, but she more than makes up for it with exo toughness. Even though super break does a whole lot of damage, being able to break twice with very high break effect on your carry is still a ton of damage. And this is what gives Fugue the edge over Harmony MC, because the double break gives you so much front loader damage to the point where sometimes super break isn't even required to defeat the enemy. The only time Harmony MC could potentially be better is that if after you break both toughness bars and deal your super break damage, the enemy still has like 70% HP, basically a ton of HP left, and will require you to deal more super break damage. This is where Harmony MC will slowly catch up because you are only dealing super break damage at this point, but right now in game, it doesn't really happen because most enemies are not capable of surviving double break plus super break damage, which is easily in the millions of damage. To me, a bigger downside to her kit is her maximum energy. Her ultimate already doesn't do a whole lot because it doesn't give break vulnerability like Wing Shao Gallagher, and all it will really be used for is to reduce toughness for your main carry to break. But even then, Hoyoverse has decided to give her 130 energy, which means even with an ERR rope, your Fu Gue might not even get a 3-turn ultimate. This is no problem at all in Memory of Chaos, but in longer fights like Pure Fiction, you will probably feel the impact slightly. I personally think Fu Gue would still have been quite balanced, even with 100 or 110 energy, which will allow her to contribute more in terms of super break damage and toughness reduction. However, at the same time, Fu Gue is extremely skill point friendly, as she mostly uses her basic attack and gives your team a lot of support just by existing, which I find much more convenient, because if your Harmony MC's build isn't great, Like if you have too little speed, you sometimes have to waste action value getting to how many MC's turn in order to use the ultimate first to get super break damage. And to be honest, I would rather have this than having lower energy cost, so I guess you win some and you lose some. Which is why for Trace priority, you want to play to her strengths in her talent and her skill. A basic attack and ultimate only upgrade the attack percentage multiplier, which honestly does absolutely nothing in a break team. So if you don't want to level those, it is completely fine as well. For stats, you obviously want to get the break traces first, before speed and HP. And all her bonus abilities are fairly important, even the action delay one, because you can get more stats by unlocking it. Now that brings us to Fu Gue's builds, and let's start out with Relics. Fu Gue Fugue or whatever does have quite a lot of customization and flexibility as a result of a kit, so make sure you pay attention closely because certain combinations are better for certain playstyles, teams, or scenarios. Firstly, we have 4-piece Iron Cavalry. As we mentioned before, Fu Gue quite rarely gets to deal toughness reduction or even super break damage, as you ideally want to give that to your break carry with higher break effect. Hence, it is quite rare that Fu Gue is even able to make use of the defense reduction because she is not dealing super break damage. However, in longer fights like in Pure Fiction and sometimes even Apocalyptic Shadow, it is definitely possible for Fugue to deal super break damage. Hence my recommendation still being 4-piece Iron Cavalry over 2-piece combinations, because in general it is the most flexible choice. For the other 2-piece combinations, you can run stuff like Double Break or Break plus Speed. The reason why I'm not too keen on these options is because speed doesn't do a whole lot for Fugue. Even if you get faster turns, you may still require 4 to even 5 turns if Fugue doesn't get hit to regenerate her ultimate back. And each individual turn you take is just a pretty weak AoE basic attack. It doesn't really do a whole lot, and on top of that, she already gets 14 speed from her tracers, which is a lot. I found that I was even able to get 170 plus speed on Fugue, which is, I think, really overkill. Whereas if you run Double Break, it just helps you to hit the break point of 220 or maybe 250, but doesn't really give you more damage or anything. I think speed just has pretty low value in general for Fugue because she already gets quite a lot of it and she doesn't do more with it, rather efficiently, which is why I would rather you invest into more break effect or the defense reduction from 4-piece Iron Cavalry. For 29 elements or 2-piece sets, the only real options are Talia Kingdom of Banditry and Forge of the Kalpenny Lantern. Both give you more break effect, but Kalpenny can give you the additional boost when attacking a fire weak enemy, hence this is probably going to be the better planar ornament because it gives speed, but it is slightly more niche because you can only really be using this with Firefly to always get this effect. If you plan to use her with Rappa and Butil as well, sometimes these enemies don't have fire weakness, I would just use Talia because it's much simpler, you don't have to swap them around all the time. For Relic sets, you want to go for effect hit rate, speed boots, HP or defense up, and then energy regeneration rate rope or break. Fugue's defense reduction has a 100% base chance to apply, meaning you need around 60+% effective rate in order to guarantee the debuff on level 95 enemies like in Memory of Chaos 12. The body main stat already gives us 43.2% effective rate, so you only really need an additional 20% from substats. Speed I think is a bit of a no-brainer, even though it's not very good, there just isn't better options. HP or defense is also pretty simple, it's just like Run Mei. She doesn't really deal normal damage anyways, so an attack or fire damage up increases her damage by such a minuscule amount that I would rather you just get more defensive options to help her stay alive. Finally, Break Effect or ERR Rope is the more complicated choice. The easiest answer is to use ERR Rope in longer fights, so you can get more value out of the ultimate. In shorter fights like in Memory of Chaos, there is a chance even with the rope or E2 that you will not even get to her second ultimate because the team is strong enough to clear the stage very quickly, which means that a break effect rope will just be better. I believe an ERR rope is much better with tutorial mission or even solitary healing in Pure Fiction, and also with E2 as the E2 is affected by energy regen. You do in fact want to hit at least 220% break because this triggers her bonus ability break buff. And that may sound like a lot, but trust me, it's really easy to hit. The reason is because you only need to hit this in battle, not outside of it. This means that you can include buffs like Inert Respiration from Run Mei, Watchmaker probably also from Run Mei, Talia or Kalpenny's second break effect boost also only applies in battle, and her bonus ability that gives 30% break also only applies in battle. So if you were perhaps, for example, aiming for 220% break in battle with Talia, that would be 220 minus 50 from Manmei, minus 20 from Talia, and then minus 30 from her bonus ability, and 25% for free from her traces, meaning you only need an extra 120% break effect, which is very possible with just substats. If you are running Iron Cavalry, you would want to get 250% break in game, but I think it's still very possible because I was even able to get 270 to 300% sometimes, but that's with a brick roll, of course. So just make sure you farm some relics with brick substats for her. And that brings us to light cones, because some light cones can give you extra break effect or energy regen that helps you meet the stats that you want. Firstly, we have her S1. To be honest, I don't really like stat stick light cones a whole lot, but it actually gives 36% break vulnerability, which is a lot. It isn't really anything unique like Acheron or Kafka's light cone, because with these light cones, usually the difference between like the other choice, especially Acheron's light cone, is going to be quite big. I mean, I say this is a bad thing, but this also means that free-to-play options are comparatively better, like Pearl's S5. Unfortunately, even with all the defense reduction from Ningxia, Firefly Boot Heal, Rappa E1 or Boot Heal S1, getting 99% defense reduction with Pearls will still rarely outweigh the 36% brick vulnerability from her S1. I think Pearls just gives too little defense reduction even at S5 to truly be competitive with the light cone, unless it's a Boot Heal team. This does mean that her S1 is in fact worth pulling for if you have a Ningxia who can heavily contribute to super break damage, even as a healer, or maybe even Gallagher, or even Fu Gue herself at E2 and above. If you are using Boot Heal instead, whose team completely revolves around him and rarely runs a team with sustains, Pearls becomes a much better choice. As you can see, the difference is about 10-ish%. In fact, I would encourage you to just use Pearls and save your pulls for something else, as the difference is small enough to warrant not pulling for it. This is especially true with Boot Heal's S1 because it has defense reduction. But for teams like Firefly and Rappa who usually have a second breaker, S1 is always going to be the best choice. Other possible options include Solitary Healing, Fermata, and Tutorial Mission. None of these light cones really contribute to the team's damage like Pearls or S1, which is why I rate them lower for Fyoog. Solitary Healing is probably the best completely free-to-play option, as it has some break and some inconsistent energy regen. I'm pretty sure it requires you to break to get a burn DOT, which is why I called it inconsistent. Fermata gives some break effect, but the increase in damage is completely useless because, Fugue does break damage. Before the tutorial mission starts, it's an energy light cone that is only really good with ERR rope because it guarantees a 3-turn ultimate. With E2, it gets much better because in scenarios like Pure Fiction, you can sometimes even get a 2-turn ultimate. And because her E2 is a mini dance, you can get a ton of action advances in the same fight. Hence, I only really recommend this light cone at E2 and especially in Pure Fiction. So to summarize, if you are using Fugue in Memory of Chaos and the battle takes 150 plus action value, is 1 or 0 cycles, S1 and Break Rope is always going to be the best in slot. If you are in the Boot Heal team, S1 has the highest value still, but Pearls becomes a very good alternative. In Pure Fiction or sometimes even Apocalyptic Shadow, if you take a lot of action value to clear, ERR Rope is going to be better, assuming that you can get 220% or 250% break in battle. Unless you have E2, then you can maybe play Fugue with a Break Rope without spamming action advance, or you can go crazy with energy regen and 2-turn ultimates, but that only really works in Pure Fiction. So now, before we move on to teams and Eidolons, don't forget to like or even subscribe, as it helps the channel a lot. Now, for people who want to invest further into Fugue or perhaps pull more copies in the future, because there are some pretty big characters coming up soon, Fugue genuinely has some pretty good investment in terms of Eidolons. I think a lot of people think E1 is very OP, but Fugue should be played with Runway anyways, and Firefly and Rappa have built-in weakness break efficiency, so it actually isn't very strong unless it's a Boot Heal team, because he doesn't. Boot Heal gets a 30+% damage boost, while Firefly and Rappa get around 18, so 20% rounded up, because they already have that inbuilt weakness break efficiency. E2, like I mentioned earlier, only really shines in Pure Fiction or in very long fights, which is why the value looks lower here. But in Pure Fiction, for example, you can get a lot of extra DPAV from this Eidolon, so it's actually still a very strong Eidolon. E4 is actually deceptively strong, and I'm very happy about this actually, because most other characters E4 are just a complete waste of money before E6. This is because it is an independent break damage multiplier. Like, you know how there isn't a damage boost for break damage? Yeah, this is basically the first of its kind, I think. And since it's so rare, it is a huge damage boost for your team. Finally, Fugue's E6 is the type of Eidolon that slowly builds up to it. We got all the buffs before for Foxian Prayer and break damage dealt, and now everyone gets to benefit from it because everyone gets Foxian Prayer, and even an extra 50% break efficiency for Fugue. This allows Fugue to become more of a sub DPS and support at the same time, because she gets energy regen from E2, she now gets 150% break efficiency, she gets 30% break effect from Foxian Prayer, she can reduce toughness regardless of types, and she can contribute much more to the team. In teams with Ningxia and Gallagher as well, this is a huge boost because not only does your hyper carry benefit, even your sustain can increase their damage greatly. The reason why Boot Heal appears to have the biggest damage boost is because Fugue can actually now save Boot Heal a turn for breaking the Adventuring boss. But in reality, it should be stronger for Firefly and Rappa teams who usually run the sustain like Gallagher or Ningxia. The principle behind Fugue is just that she is a replacement for Harmony MC in pretty much every team. Like I already showed in my previous video, Fugue is a pretty good upgrade in all these teams, even for Firefly, because double breaking is a ton of damage, even if there isn't more innate synergy like double stacks for both Heal and Rappa. In all game modes, Himiko also benefits greatly from Fugue because Exo Toughness gives her potentially twice as many stacks as before. I do not think she measures up to Rappa with a Ningxia team still, but it's definitely something to keep in mind if you don't have Rappa or Ningxia in Pure Fiction. She is also very strong for Shui as well, since she can now reduce toughness regardless of types, and there is also technically more toughness to reduce with a second bar. But I think Shui was originally already in a pretty rough spot. If you are a Shui or Himiko main, I believe Fugue is a very welcome buff, but she obviously will not elevate them to insane levels of damage that the other break carries are able to put out. Finally, there has been some whispers about playing Fugue in an Acheron team. To do that, you obviously have to downgrade from Pella or Xiao Qiu, which is a huge damage loss for Acheron, as Break and Super Break don't really do a whole lot for her. This is only really strong in Pure Fiction, where the wave doesn't really require as much damage to clear anyways, and honestly all it really does is that you run Pella without Pearls, or Venturing without S1 or Trend, which doesn't do a whole lot in terms of stack generation. I think for this to work better, you need to use Foxian Prayer on a follow-up unit like Himeko or Herta instead of a Venturing, because he is already very easily able to apply debuffs with Trend or S1 because his ultimate also applies a debuff, right? And even then, it's only really something to do in Pure Fiction unless you have a very strong Acheron like E2 and above, and then you could maybe consider putting it on someone like Ningxia in Apocalyptic Shadow. Like, it could be pretty good against the current Banan enemy, because once broken, they already take a ton of damage from Acheron and you don't really need more of it. Basically, the core of your team should be Fugue and run main in the break team, and I think it would be unwise to pull Fugue just for Acheron unless you have both Acheron and a break carry. This would then be the best case scenario. And so when it comes to E1 versus S1, because of how the teams are built sometimes, like Boothill really wants to run sustainers, E1 is usually a much better pull for Boothill teams. If you're a Boothill main, you should be looking at E1 instead of S1. And if you're a Firefly or Rappa main or whatever you like those teams instead, you should be looking at S1 instead of E1. Anyways, thanks for watching and see you.